That was a hard watch. Welcome back to Pommy in Oz. Hope we're all doing really well. If you're new around here, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe. We're smashing out the subscribers at the moment, so can't thank you enough for the support. Without support, I'd just be a miserable old man ranting on here. If you want to become a member, we're going to do a membership stream this time next week. We're going to give away one of these bad boys, a Charlie Kerner head wobble thing. We'll do like a little care package along with a Pominos merch. So if you want to do that, link is in the description to become a member, or if you want to buy the shirt outright, link is in the channel. And we're going to be talking about the Carlton game that's just gone on. So they went to the gather round, they opened it up, all exciting, all fun and frivolity, and ended up getting done by 56 points. And in a game that I don't mind losing at all. I'm a firm believer that the losses shape you just as much as the wins. But the manner of loss there, the positive that I'm trying to cling to is that they've booked the flights, got on the right plane and taken, I'd presume, an overnight luggage with them. And that is probably their success. And it feels like that when you look at this side. It was said to me midweek that another football department that played Carlton and said that you've just got to ask the question for long enough. There's still some fracture from the years gone by, and you see it. You see it. Particularly, I think it would be easy to come in here and just criticise 18 players, which would be easy to do. I think the big thing is when you look at this side is you can see it happening before it actually happens. It's almost like we get the benefit of being in the future and they're not. And the big case of it for me is how quickly it falls apart. How quickly it falls apart when these boys are asked a question. And the first thing I want to talk about is the centre clearances and the stoppage from there. And it's something that we talked about week 2. It was really noticeable that Carlton had been a lot more defensive, where they used to be really aggressive there and probably sometimes too aggressive. And this week, the amount of times you saw Adelaide do this is absolutely amazing. Let's bring up the old tactics board. But the amount of times they did this was amazing. The amount of times that our boys from the centre bounce shifted this way. So this is our goal, protecting. There's our goal. We're protecting our goal. They kind of tried to get themselves into this shape, which you saw so often. Their winger swung by here, and it was almost like Carlton's old manoeuvre last year that worked so well that they got it out into their defensive half, and then they could ping here. And we really saw it break down very early. It was actually the opening bounce. We saw that this got progressively worse. And what you see from this angle here is that they had players suddenly ahead, and Carlton had to shift to put pressure on. No one was blocking runners to get through. Riley O'Brien did a great job at taking 2 people off, and almost you had this handball here. And there was a great scene for their third goal where Walsh has swung back, got the tackle here, and no one's checked their runners, and they've had 2 runners alongside, and they got an easy inside 50 and an easy goal. And that got progressively worse. We actually started to see players really get back, that we actually saw there was a moment where Kennedy actually moved himself here straight from the centre bounce. And when you're going to be like that weak and you're going to be that mindseted, and that's the mindset that you're coming in to that game, that is a big, big problem for me, because that's Carlton's strength. That is Carlton's one wood last year. And I appreciate that they've had to change it, right? Because of how, well, because they're trying to get a better defensive transition, and protect that centre clearance score, which is understandable. And for the most part, they've shown that they can score different ways. But my big concern there is in these type of games, you've got to be more bolder. And there's an old saying in golf that you start your round how you finish your last one, which when I was a kid, I used to find that truly bizarre, to be honest, when my coach used to tell me that. But that first 10 minutes felt like Carlton were 60 points up, 10 minutes to play, and they were nursing the injuries. And that is a big concern for me, because this was a big game. And I don't buy into Adelaide Oval and there's a curse and stuff like that. The Romani in me tells you that's not how a curse works. You fight it. And this was a game, really, in this next 4, was a great test because all Adelaide are supreme at, and full credit to them, is they execute the basics. And they read the manual on Carlton Football Club and they asked that question. And again, the boys failed to deliver. And the second point I want to pick on is definitely this. And if we look at this here, these are the traditional zones Carlton defend kick-ins, and this has been working really well. And I want you to look at this one here. This one here is really important. That's usually where there is a block here for the inside 50 kick, which allows this zone to shift up. Now, if you watched this week, and because Carlton were so reactive, instead of having players here putting pressure on, they started to make it easy on themselves, right? And you'll see what happens. There was 6 kick-ins in that first half that Carlton had, 16 players in D50. And when people talk about man up, no team mans up anymore. Even Ross, who is an archetype man up, it's an incredible zonal system. This is how you break a zone. It's called flooding it, and you use the opposition to flood. Carlton reacted, and you saw how easy it was for them to get these uncontested marks because suddenly an Adelaide player was here. He's in 2 people's zones. So that means that there's another Adelaide player here who flips into it. And that is a reactive exercise. That is Carlton being incredibly reactive and incredibly making it easy on themselves. And that was a lot of times in the midfield why their structure in midfield died. They were reacting. That it was easier to be outside of the arc to make the tackle than it was to go and attack the ball carrier. It was easier to jog into position than it was to attack the man. And there was a great example of this in this game with our ball movement. Sam Walsh looking busy every time. You could see that as soon as he got the ball, he turned the jets on. He looked to make a decision quickly. Back half of the ground, you had Carlton taking marks, relieving pressure, little chip kick to the wing, and then it was slow. And the big thing here I want to talk about is this wing kick. So if we go back to our tactics board, this is where Carlton hit the wing. Now, it's amazing that people hate the wing because Carlton are an 80% side, but what they genuinely have done this year, which has started to be impressive, and it's why you've got your D50 scores, is they open up the corridor by going out wide quickly. When it becomes slow, this area gets flooded, and the only option available to our boys is here. And this is the kick, and that's the kick that was turned over. And then Carlton hit that horrible loopy kick, and the massive difference between Adelaide and us was this kick here. It's the loopy kick here, which is playing in to their incredible zone. They played that same zone, them little green little dots we showed. We'll bring them back up. We'll make them in a nice pink. But these little guys here were feasting on that because they could just go here with 0 forward pressure. Carlton invariably were kicking to 2-on-4, and it was just gimme, gimme, gimme. And because Carlton had been so slow, they weren't structured in, so easy to go coast to coast. And when people talk about Carlton's inability to be coast to coast, it's the quickness in which we turn it over. When we move the ball slow, Carlton dragged their entire list there. You go back and watch that first when Carlton were exiting D. It was insane. There was like 14 players in that little circle. And when you dribble that kick, as opposed to Adelaide, who came in, they hit that pacey lead up. They're kicking it out in front of their forwards, so their forwards have something to run onto. Carlton are kicking on the top of the heads. There's nothing they can do. That you saw the leads from Curnow and McIntyre were good, but because it was looped up, they lost the advantage. Where Fogarty, he's running the balls out in front of him. It's benefiting his lead. Basics, basics, basics. And Carlton again failed at the coal mill. And it's definitely a mentality thing because they can do it. And yes, they can do it against shit opposition, North Melbourne, but they can do it. The next progression is going to a very well-oiled, very confident side in Adelaide. And all Adelaide did was apply a little bit pressure and the wheels came off. The wheels came off in such a way that they've lost the fans. And it's ironic that the tackling inside 50 is the best it's been this year. But that was because of desperation. They got the forward half intercepts, which is what Carlton have been dining out on. The problem is the 7 guys that should have been in the midfield or in the forward line were now in the defensive half, so they couldn't overflood and flood that forward 50. So you get that loopy kick. It gives them chance to get forward in ahead of the ball. But it's useless. And these are systematical flaws that it's mindset. It's mindset and it's a willingness to want. And you see it in the broader picture of how the club operates. And it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing because these are basic 101s. And this game in that fourth quarter, I think, tells a lot to the fan base. And I feel sorry for the vivacious crowd in Adelaide. But how passionate the fans are for you to come out like that and play limp, apathetic. Even the press conferences at the end, Carlton almost are trying to find a mythical excuse. A mythical excuse like something is going wrong that they can't control. And unfortunately, if you're involved in something as a team, you can control it. And Voss touched on it. And this is what worries me, that he touches on it, but he never fixes it. They did win micro battles. Nick Newman did beat Rankine. However, Kennedy at halfback, mental. Them changes in that game are mental. And something we've been saying to Voss is he has got creative. Lockie Plowman, you can slate him all you want. He was poo. He's got 19 mates who were poo as well. But you know what you're going to get. If you've lost your interceptor, you don't bring in a guy that's not an interceptor. These are real clear little football rules. And the disjointedness of this side when it goes wrong. And you see the cream, you see the effort. Holland's the effort. You see Walsh the effort. Ed Kerno tried his heart out all day. But then you see some of the players on this list and you see zero effort, zero intensity, zero care factor, zero. Other teams are playing more hurt with less talent, but they're sticking to the task at hand. And it feels like with Carlton that there is almost at times, and this has been coming the first quarter. We've just really got lucky in the first quarters. Even against Geelong, we were slow, patient. It's almost like there's a period of our mums singing to us in bed before we fall asleep to calm us before we go. And Adelaide just said, fuck it. Ask them the question now. And they could never recover. And that was as cruisy as a game as Adelaide will ever face. And that is a big disappointment for a team that I don't buy into. They haven't changed. You look at how they're playing, they have. The problem that hasn't changed is this. And as my pop used to say, you can put a dress and makeup on a pig, but at the end of the day, if you marry it, you're just married to a very pretty pig, right? That is a big, big thing here. Carlton have added some new layers. Problem still remains. The mentality and the desire of this team still questioned under the furnace. And this is not a side that Carlton should be fearing. Carlton should be looking at where they are, the experience we have, and the age and the togetherness of them, and saying we can match it at the very least with these. But there is a huge gulf in class, and that is because the ruthless application of your system and the basics and the togetherness and the belief in each other's systems, and not doing the easy thing, doing the hard thing. And big questions have asked. And now Voss has seen this. This is not new to Voss. And we've all seen it. This is another moment where it's happened in his short tenure. And I expect now Voss has got to become a mentality monster. He's got to start culling players that are doing this, because when your leaders are guilty of this, that's a big factor. And I don't care Doc's out. I don't care McGovern's out. Don't care about Sard's injury and Pitternet's injury. They're a team. Voss is right. It's next man up. But the players out there who let us down, and you know who they are, we're not going to name them. They're big game players. They've played a lot of games. They're not new. They're not wet behind the ears. But when Walsh is busting his ass to tackle a man that's not his in the first 5 minutes of the game because the guy near him is jogging, big mentality flaw. Big mentality flaw. And this now is you're at your lowest. You won't get lower than this. And next week, you are coming against the masters this season so far of executing the basics. Ross has got these boys drilled to an inch of their lives. They play their positions in their sleep. Stocker loves compact rules. He's thriving because he can play that role in his eyes with his eyes closed. You look at the other players there, right? You look at the young players. They have got defined roles and defined structures. Cal Wilkes thriving because he's got a defined role. They believe in their system. They believe in their role and they stick to their roles. And this week, again, Carlton become reactive, not impactful. And until they learn to die by the sword, kind of like Collingwood did against Brisbane, they died by their sword. And you know what? You can cope with that because today they died by their weakness against Adelaide. They died by their mental fragility, being a little bit too hard, a little bit too many questions asked, a little bit furnacey. And you know, they do what they always do. They defend in numbers. They screw their positions, count and turn it over. But the nearest person forward is at the wing. They are mentalities that have existed. And we went back to that Bolton era. One man in the forward line, loop it in, hope he takes a contested mark, no one around him, and then wonder why it's coming back. And you saw here what happens when they're left to their own devices. And that is a big L. Big L. And we're going to see what they're made of next week. See what they're made of. It's disappointing, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's disappointing. But as always, not the result we wanted. It stings. And hopefully it stings them. Because next week, back in front of a home crowd, back on a home deck, back in front of the fans that love them. Be harsh to them, but make sure that you give them the love as well. They have to come out next week and show it. Much love to you all. See you soon.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad.